Welcome back, everyone, to the Make a Pong game. This is Jonathan here, and where we left off last time, well, basically our computer is a complete noob. As you can see here, he's completely easy to beat, and I guess I'm even just easier to beat at this game. But still, we want to add some extra challenge in here and make it so our computer can fight back unless I'm the computer's opponent, in which case he's already way too good for me. So let's take a look at how we can handle this. Well, first of all, we've made some adjustments to this paddle here. We put the script on, we have this top, middle, and bottom, and our computer paddle just doesn't really have any of that going for him. So what we're going to do is we're going to delete that computer paddle, but we're going to pay attention to what its transform is up here first, so we can see its position is -8. So we can just go ahead and not delete the name, but actually delete the paddle itself, and then we can press Control D or Command D on our player paddle, and then change its X position transform to -8. And now we can rename this one computer paddle. And to make things more sense, I'm going to reorganize them in the hierarchy just so the paddles are together and then the ball is underneath that. Make sure you don't actually position these objects within each other, so make sure they don't become children of each other. You want them to all be parent objects in the hierarchy. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to add some tags. So we already have a tag here for player, so I'm going to turn our main paddle into, I'm going to give it the player tag, and then over here under computer paddle I'm going to add a tag, and we're going to call this one computer. And now what we are going to do is just rename that, or we're going to assign that the computer tag. So our paddle has the player tag, and our computer has the computer tag. Actually, you know what? No. What I'm going to do is I'm going to not call it the computer tag. I'm going to untag it first. And what we're going to do is we're going to call it, I'm going to get rid of this one, and then I'm going to make a tag. I'm just going to call it player2. And the reason we're going to do this is just in case we want to actually add a human element to the game, so we can have another player play as the other paddle. So it wouldn't make much sense to call player2 computer, but player1 is just player, player2 is player2, and you can fight over who gets to be player2. Okay, so now if we hit play, we should see it's going to actually work, but I mean, it kind of works for, well, you can control both paddles at the same time, so you can play against yourself here. Not exactly what we want. We want the computer paddle to be moving on its own. So how are we going to do that? Well, first of all, we're going to hop over into our monodevelop, and we're going to constrain our movement here for the player within an if statement. So what we're going to do is we're going to say if GameObject.name, or sorry, not .name, but .tag equals player, and this is how we type this out, then we are going to, actually we're going to make a new method name here, and we're going to call this move player paddle. And then what we're going to do is we're going to Control X, cut all of this stuff, and put it into a new method name here. We're going to call this void move player paddle, and paste all of that in here. Now we could type else if player GameObject.tag equals player2, but we can also just simplify that and just use else. And then we're going to say move computer paddle. And now we have to make a void new method for move computer paddle. So void, sorry, I did this again. Not move computer paddle, move player2 paddle. Move player2 paddle. Actually, in this case, no, it is going to be, sorry, last time I promise, in this case it is going to be computer paddle. If we're going to move a player2 later, then it's going to be, then our player2 is actually going to have a method of its own, but this actually is the computer we're moving here. So just some housekeeping, name things appropriately, and I apologize for that confusion, but sometimes as I'm talking, as I'm making this, it throws me off a little bit. Zoom in here so you can see what I'm doing a little bit better. So how are we going to actually move the computer paddle on its own? Well, the moving part, you should already kind of have an idea that it's not going to be too complicated. Basically, instead of using if statements for up and down arrow keys, we already have the movement figured out over here in the void move player up and move player down. So it's going to be quite similar for the computer paddle. The question is, how are we going to call these and actually move the player or move the computer paddle at the appropriate time and the appropriate amount? Well, it would make a lot of sense if the computer paddle knew where the ball was. So how do we go about doing that? How do we make the player paddle have that knowledge? Well, first of all, what we have to do is we have to go into our ball script and we have to figure out where the ball is at all times. So we're going to do this as a float, and we're just going to say public float ball pause y, because we only need to know where it is in the y-axis. The x-axis doesn't really matter for this. And under the update, we're going to say ball pause y equals transform.position.y. So we're storing the y coordinate of the ball within a variable, but that's over here within the ball script. That's not within the player paddle script. I'm probably going to have to rename this paddle also, but we'll do that later. So basically what we need to do is we need to make sure that the paddle script can talk to the ball script and that it knows where the ball is. So to do this, we use something called GameObject.find. And let's go into PowerPoint here. Basically, we are going to be connecting scripts so they can talk with each other. And there is a method name here, and that's called GameObject.findObjectOfType. That little piece of code is worth memorizing because you're going to be using this quite often. So let's go back into Unity. What GameObject.findObjectOfType is going to do is it's going to go over here into your hierarchy on the upper left corner, and it's going to look through every object here one at a time for the object with the script attached to it that you have told it to look for. So let's put this into practice, and then we can go through it in a little more detail and see exactly what we mean. So to start off with, we have to go in here and we have to create a reference to our ball script. And we do that by typing private ball. So capital B on this first one, because this is referencing the script, and this is the variable name we're giving it, so a small b ball. And now, within the void start, we can go down a couple of lines here, and we can say ball equals GameObject, capital G, capital O, dot find object of type, and then we do an open or a less than sign, and we type capital B ball, greater than sign, open close parentheses, because it is a method, and then we do a semicolon. So basically what we're telling this script to do is go through the hierarchy and look for the object that has the ball script attached to it and store it in this variable. So as soon as we type this, it's going over here and it's going, is there a ball script on the main camera? Nope. Let's go on to the next object. Is it on the dotted white line? Nope. Canvas, etc., until it gets to ball. Finally, it sees there is a ball script and it stores a reference to this object in that variable. So that's cool. And because we've named this as a public float over here in the ball script, we should be able to call it now. So what we can do is we can say if actually, first, let's so we don't retype things more than we need to. We're going to store the paddle position in a variable as well. So we're going to say float paddle pause y equals transform.position.y, just like we did before. Now we're going to say if paddle pause y is less than ball.ball pause y, then we are going to Well, let's think about this. If the paddle is lower than where the ball is, we want to move it up. So we can just say take this line of code here and paste that in. And similarly, now we can say else. So in other words, if the paddle is on the same level or higher than the ball, we can move it down. So let's take the correct line of code, copy this in, paste this in, and there we go. And of course, the other thing we need to do is constrain it. We've already worked out the code for that, so we can just copy, paste that over here, and hit Control S. And now let's go back into Unity and test this out, see if it works. So look at that. The paddle is moving on its own. Now the computer paddle kind of looks like it's having a seizure. We'll fix that in a later video. But right now the computer paddle it has its mind of its own. So that's pretty cool, and it really wasn't that hard to do. Of course, there is another issue right now. The computer paddle is just way too good, and the ball is moving too slow. So there's no chance of us really ever scoring. Of course, it can score on me quite easily. Now, let's just take this speed over here, which is 7.5, and we'll just change this to 3. And as for the ball moving too slowly, well, that has to do not with the normalizing, but that just has to do, well, it kind of has to do with normalizing. But in the ball script, I used force x as my, and force x and force x as my variable here in the velocity. So I'm just going to change that to not 90, but 0. And over here as 0, and I'm going to save that. And now we'll go back into Unity, and we'll hit play, and whoops, and I will get ready to actually play. And there we can see now the ball is actually speeding up. The computer paddle is significantly slower, so I actually have a chance here of scoring if I can just get the ball bouncing up and down enough, which is basically how Pong works. Getting close, getting close. Come on, I can do it. Well, this could take a little while because, you know, I'm not a pro Pong player. I don't play at the competitive esport level. But basically, we have a working Pong game at this point, minus some other things like scoring and all that. But yeah, it's kind of moving on its own, and even actually the player paddle or the computer paddle does not look like it's having a seizure anymore. So that's pretty cool too. So, how did you guys get on here? Oh, score! Did you learn something? Did you figure this one out? Did it make sense to you? If you have any questions, let me know. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.